Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of the Games Den podcast. You are currently joined by me, Atty.
I'm Evan.
And I'm Shashank.
Awesome, and we are your hosts. So, for those of you who don't know, we are the Games Den. We are a student group at the University of Alberta. We kind of operate around 3 pillars, which is make, talk, and play games. And so kind of everything we do, whether it's like doing actual life game day and playing games for charity, or doing game jams and making games, or having professionals from Probable and BioWare come and talk. That's all stuff that we do. And yeah, that's us.
Yeah.
So kind of steamrolling into the second episode of the podcast, I wanted to start off by talking about the games that we are playing. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first since it's real short. I went over to my sister and brother-in-law's house the other day, and we played Overcooked 2. Every time I go over, we play a couple levels. It's a very interesting game because it requires such cooperation out of the both of you just so that stuff works. And once it starts working, it really works. Yeah, after Overcooked 2, I started Animal Crossing yesterday.
Oh, okay. Did you just start the game?
Yeah, I just started.
You play for a while? Ooh, okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
so I will join the craze.
I'll say one thing before we move on to Animal Crossing or Overcooked. I remember that we were playing it at the Games Den, like in our room. One day we hooked it up to the projector and we put in our controllers, and I think we played 4-player cooperative Overcooked on a giant projector screen.
Yeah.
And what I love about the game is just the fact that like its controls are so like minimalist, but it's just the fact that there are actually too many chefs in the kitchen that makes the game exciting. It just plays in that so well.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's so cool. But I have a question for you, Shashank. Like with Animal Crossing, do you already find yourself getting hooked into the game?
Yeah. I can see, because they're like, oh, log in every day and talk to your villagers, and like every day Tom Nook will have something new for you. I'm on day 2. I've already sunk in time.
How many hours do you have in so far?
Not too many, just like 4, maybe a little less.
And you're in day 2?
Yeah, I started last night.
Oh damn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right, because it follows the 24-hour cycle.
Yeah.
I, for one, was never too much into games like Harvest Moon or Animal Crossing. I played Harvest Moon with one of the games. I think it was Mineral Town.
Right.
And that's about all I played. But yeah, I never personally saw I remember when. Do you remember Farmville was a thing?
Yeah.
Back in the old day when Facebook was still the most popular social media platform, we used to have this little game called Farmville. For those of you who are too young to know what that is, and who missed out on the craze. But Farmville was this interesting game where you also had a similar like energy meter system that they used to have. Animal Crossing is like, from my perspective, is like Farmville on steroids, but without the energy system.
Yeah, it's just like you can keep playing and playing and playing.
But do you ever feel like you run out of things to do? Like,
yeah,
while you're
definitely. Especially since I'm in the very early game, I don't have like all the items and stuff, and I just gotta wait for new drops.
That's interesting. I mean, I think that Animal Crossing is one of those games that have a lot of my friends are like, super into the game and have taken over their entire lives. Are we allowed to call names in this podcast?
It's your podcast. You can do whatever you want.
Set the standard.
I feel like I should ask these people before I call them out of their names.
Use fake names for now.
Okay, let's call person number 1 Bendy, and we'll call the second person M-Boy.
Okay. Interesting choices.
So Bendy and M-Boy have been talking a lot about Animal Crossing to me recently, and particularly about how Animal Crossing has this weird competitive spirit to it, where you go to other people's islands and suddenly you feel like your island sucks, and so you have to go back and you have to like make your island much better than their island because it's a competitive game now.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. Because I one of the first games I ever played actually was it's one of the Harvest Moons for the PlayStation 2. And like that is basically just make a farm, save the homeland.
We'll see you at the Animal Crossing esports event tomorrow.
Join the GameStend Discord. We have Animal Crossing tournaments weekly.
Animal Crossing weeklies. Oh no.
Would this be considered emergent gameplay?
You know.
That's last episode. We gotta move on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Can't talk about it ever again. It's
no,
done.
never again. The topic is exhausted, and we're never coming back to it ever again.
Yeah.
Evan, what have you been up to? What have you been playing?
Most recently, I've been playing Ape Out.
Ooh.
Which is, for those who don't know, it's this really cool little top-down action game where you're playing a gorilla trying to escape from wherever. It varies based off of level, and you have to fight your way out, and the game just kind of oozes style. Its soundtrack is entirely percussion, which gives it this really
Unga bunga vibe.
Yeah. And like whenever you kill an enemy, it plays like a cymbal crashes or a bell gongs based off of what level you're on, and it just leads to this very visceral feeling from everything.
You are
it's very cool. Yeah, you really are.
Man, I can't believe it locked up Harambe. I thought that all the news was fake all this time.
Yeah.
The truth is, we're just playing as Harambe and Ape Out, and we're just breaking through prison, the American prisons that they have set. Oh no. But you're right.
Amazing.
So was that?
That game, it's just amazing. Like they get almost everything right, I feel.
It reminds me of Super Hot a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it would I think it was super low poly models that they were using, and also like you don't freeze time in the game, right? It's not a mechanic.
No.
Like it's just running and
it's all just real time. Yeah.
It does sound super cool. Maybe we should do like a thing where we just like at the end of every podcast we have like a game recommendation section. We just recommend games to people.
I feel like that list would just grow exponentially.
Like every time we just recommend one game each. And prefer something that's not too obvious.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to quickly talk about Persona 5 Royal, because I just finished that game at 4 a.m. Like 2 days ago. So I started playing the game when it came out, on the day it came out, and I was like, I'd already sunk in like over 70 hours in the game within the span of like a week. But then like finals happened, so I never got around to actually finishing the game. And so finally, I've brought myself to actually stop playing multiplayer games for once and pick up Persona 5 Royal and try to finish the newly added third semester to the game. And like the two of you probably already heard me go on about Persona 5 Royal and like its sick design. But I kind of just wanted to clarify something on this podcast that I think some people find useful, and whether that is like, should you buy a Persona 5 Royal? My answer to that question is you should always have Persona 5 Royal unless you have just bought Persona 5.
Okay.
So if you have spent, you should not spend more than $70 on the Persona 5 games, is my point. So the moment you have spent over $70, you don't need to do that. Like, because I don't think that what they've added to the game is totally worth the $70 price point that they charge.
Right.
Like, I think I feel like it's almost like DLC add-on content that could be worth like $40, $45 would seem fair. But the fact that it's an entire game in and of itself is like, they add a lot of cool stuff to the game. Like, and the new intro screen, the cinematics and characters, all amazing. Like, it just makes the game, an already awesome game, better. Like, that's what it does. But I wouldn't recommend buying the game if you just bought Persona 5 Royal and you haven't played through it.
So as someone who hasn't played either, would you recommend Persona 5 Royal over Persona 5?
Yeah, 100%. If you haven't spent money on Persona 5, get Royal.
Okay.
It's just better. And you get more content, you get more hours. Persona 5, I spent 140 hours. Persona 5 Royal, I spent 167 hours.
Right.
So it's, you're getting your money's worth either way, but Royal just ups the ante a lot more, I guess, I feel.
Yeah.
It's a good job with the characters and resolve some storylines that needed to be resolved.
Okay.
Yep. For Royal, is there any like major design changes, or is it just adding on that new content?
There are new mechanics to the game. So you know, in Smash Brothers Ultimate, that's the first time you get to see Joker with a grappling hook as part of the moveset. The grappling hook is an addition that they made in Royal as a mechanic. And personally, like, it does add a little bit of verticality to the palaces that you explore in Persona 5 Royal, but like, I wouldn't say necessarily really change the gameplay that much. Like, it doesn't add that much to the gameplay. And quite honestly, like, I'm critical. I love the game to death. Right, this comes from a fan of the series. I've played every Persona game since Persona 3, which is just basically Persona 3, 4 Golden, and 5 Royal. But like, I felt like the grappling hook it isn't that big of a change, really. Like, it's just there because it's cool, kind of thing. Yeah, because they're like, oh, Batman has grappling hook, let's give Joker grappling hook too. You know, like, it's not necessarily something that really adds depth to the gameplay, in my opinion. It's just kind of there.
It's kind of added on, like, an afterthought.
Yeah, it makes some cool cutscenes though. So if you're into cutscenes, the grappling hook does add some more cutscenes to the game, which look really sick.
All right,
that's cool.
The new final boss fight is so good. So good. The new final palace is just so good. Like, they ask some really hard questions. And like, obviously, if you want to get the true ending, you need to pay a certain kind of amount of options without spoiling anything. But like, as a person, when I kind of took a backseat and thought about it for a bit, I'm like, what would I pick? Like, there's some very compelling arguments that the game makes, I think, with its gameplay. And the new characters are just really, really good. Like, there's some actual good discussion. I do think that the argument it makes about therapy is, I don't know if it realizes it's making that argument, but the argument it makes about therapy isn't necessarily the one I want it to make. So I'm just gonna say that, and I'm gonna leave it at that. There's a lot of things right, but there's a few things wrong, in my opinion.
Right.
Interesting.
Well, speaking of which, we can move into our talk section, I suppose.
Yeah.
Good segue.
I gave the perfect segue.
Dr. K. I didn't know about this until today, actually, when you guys showed me. But Do you guys want to talk about Dr. K on Twitch?
Yeah, sure. I thought it'd be interesting to bring up because I stumbled across Dr. K fairly recently too, actually. Just about a couple of weeks ago. And since then I've been watching the YouTube videos and hopping on the stream a couple of times. For those of you who don't know, there's a channel on Twitch called Healthy Gamer GG, which is hosted by Dr. K, who's a Harvard-trained physician and addict coach, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Psychiatrist.
Yep.
I guess what my eyes immediately popped to is like he's Harvard trained, and I'm like, okay, it's a guy who trained at Harvard is like streaming on Twitch. He did 4 years of med school at Harvard. But yeah, I wanted to bring it up because I thought it was really interesting, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah, I mean, I've known about Dr. K for about a month. I haven't tuned into too many of his streams, but I've seen like popular clips going around of his interviews with other streamers and the like, and it's really interesting. Twitch has a very interesting culture.
Sorry, hang on. Hang on.
Yeah,
Dr. Hammer.
Dr. Hammer. First time I've heard him all day.
I know. It was like completely silent up until you started talking.
Oh my god.
You're cursing, dude.
Honestly, yeah, I am.
So, for anyone at home who listened to the first episode and was wondering why sometimes when Evan spoke there was a hammer, we have referred to this hammer as Dr. Hammer.
Yep, that is. Oh, he's getting louder now. Awesome. Yeah, he's right on my right, taking a wall off my house, I believe. So there's that.
Yeah. Bear with us, please.
Yep.
I too am moving into this. I'm in a new place right now. It's completely empty. I only have like my little IKEA table over here and nothing else.
Yeah.
I get the feeling that houses cause interesting problems.
Yeah, apparently.
That was the most vague blank statement I made in my entire life.
Well, that's oh, he's not stopping. Okay.
Let's just power through it. Now that we've introduced Dr. Hammer, what were you saying about Dr. K?
Okay, yeah, onto the other doctor. So Twitch has a very interesting culture, and it is not always a good culture. It can be toxic at times, especially with some of the larger communities. That's just what happens when you get the hive minds of these Twitch chats and whatever. And Dr. K brings an interesting perspective of actually calling out, hey, this is not good for your mental health. Like when he does interviews with other large streamers, and he just kind of highlights that the way they're living might not be the best for their mental health, and what is widely accepted as the norm on Twitch, he really brings it into the limelight and says, okay, maybe we should rethink this and figure this out. So it's really interesting because it's an entirely different perspective from really anyone else on the platform.
Yeah, that is. Because I've noticed that when I'm watching some streamers, some of the smaller communities, it's like very tight knit. Everyone is very friendly with each other. But some of the bigger communities, and this is an issue that I think Reddit faces a lot too, where people forget that they're talking to other humans, that the person on the other side of the screen is a person, right? Not just a name, not just their username, right? It's something that is we haven't really explored a whole lot before because we're entering into a huge technological age with absolutely no precedent before. And so we're having some growing pains.
I think that with Reddit and Twitch and anonymity on the internet, there does, I mean, this is like probably talked about in a lot more depth than other places, but I feel like a lot of it has to do with the fact that these forums are anonymous.
Yeah.
And so there's no risk of like real life threat unless you get spotted on the internet, which is like
Yeah.
that's that you're a streamer and people know your name and know your face. But like the very fact that I guess people have that power of anonymity on their side means that they can take these they make these interesting choices without facing the consequences in their own lives. And it's kind of like they're kind of like hiding behind a crate while at the cover, shooting from the cover like that. You know what I'm saying? Like spray firing behind cover, but not the entire process kind of shielding them for whatever else coming up in their direction.
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it feels like to me. And so with like the Twitch community, I personally don't spend much time on Twitch at all.
Yeah.
Because the time that I did spend on Twitch, which was I used to watch professional League of Legends when I was in high school, so I used to watch a lot of esports. And those are cool because you're like tuning in with a bunch of people, like watching this live event unfold, and you have this entire crowd mentality. And whenever someone makes a sick play, everyone enters like poggers, like in chat, whatever else it is, right?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But like when it comes to actual communities on Twitch, I think it's more interesting because, like you said, the bigger communities that exist, like you have these interesting hive minds that kind of spawn from that, where you have the emergence of toxicity from the fact that people are shielded not just by anonymity, but because they're a group and they're in a herd, and so it's hard to herd a herd. Wolves never hunt packs of sheep; you always wait for the single one to stray away, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of mindset applies to Twitch as well, I think, and a lot of online platforms like Reddit as well. So when Healthy Gamer started streaming, and when I found out about Dr. K's stream, this was cool to see, because like I've been to therapy sessions the entirety of university, and I still go to therapy now. But like the reason why it's so cool is because like you get to see these people who have never considered therapy before or who have gone but not have much success with them, like talk and actually come to terms. I don't know how I feel about it being in a public forum. I think that's kind of the goal of it, is to show that therapy is good, and the people who do volunteer to go on stream, like Pokimane or Dyrus or Sky Williams or all these people, right?
Yeah.
Like these people go onto the stream knowing fully aware that they are going to be their therapy session effectively, or like their session is going to be streamed online, and that takes a lot of courage. Like, in my opinion, I still don't know how I feel about it. I haven't thought about it too deeply, because for me, it's like therapy is a very private thing and it's very contained.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's being streamed online, these people are really brave to have their emotions spill on a palette for the entire Twitch community to see. Like that's a lot.
Yeah. But
like your entire life is leaked onto the paper, basically.
Yeah. I think that it's a step that needs to be taken in some way, because it shows people, like, these people that you watch, they have to do this too, right? They're not immune to it. No one is, right? It's something I think about a lot, because obviously I want to go into psychiatry, and just how media and the internet shape who we are, how we act, right? All this sort of stuff. Yeah.
I think so. I want to ask you a question, but like the interesting thing is that Twitch, primarily, the coolest thing to come out of Twitch, in my opinion, is charity streams. In my opinion, that's the best thing that Twitch has ever done and contributed to the world. But I'm curious, from your perspective, as someone who wants to go into psychiatry, like, what are your opinions about Dr. K's method, and what do you feel about the fact that you have these private therapy sessions that are being streamed? I mean, you already talked a little bit about like the fact that you are conveying to the masses what is perhaps what they should go through, and what the person they're watching is going through.
Right.
what do you feel about his method, and more particularly, what do you think is gonna cause? Like, do you think it's gonna have a ripple effect?
I hope it'll have a ripple effect. I hope people will not only say like, "Oh, I have the same issues. I should go talk about it." Um, I hope that it fosters within those larger communities of these streamers support for them, right? Um,
Yeah.
as for his methods, I think it's good for like an initial session, right? Further sessions can be private where you hash out different strategies, different methods, different coping strategies, right? To deal with some of the finer point issues. But for initial, it is slightly worse than a private session because obviously you can't talk about everything in a public forum. There's some stuff you want to keep private. But it's very interesting to see how all of this is evolving to fit around the internet.
Yeah. You know what's really cool? Like, Dr. K, if you've watched in one of his streams or watched one of his longer videos with somebody, like, he brings up concepts from Ayurveda, and he brings up concepts from like Indian philosophy and other things. Now, the interesting thing about this is that I grew up in India for 18 years. Like, my mom and my dad kept my grandmom, like, they always went on and on about like these things.
Yeah.
Like Ayurveda, how it's good for you, and like blah blah blah. And like as a teen, as a kid growing up, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Can you give me my games now? Like, you know what I'm talking?
Yeah.
So I never used to actually have any respect or any. I never thought highly of Indian medicine,
Right.
and that kind of stuff. Then only in the last 2 years have I really had a chance to experience. I went to this week-long boot camp in the middle of nowhere, really, in Maharashtra, which is like by the coast. And so I went on a week-long boot camp, and it was raining like every single day. It was pouring throughout the entire day. There was no internet. I had my Switch and Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and I had literally nothing else. And so I would basically go in the morning. I wake up 5 a.m. They'd give us like, I ate nothing but fruits for an entire week. And so they would, and just liquid and fruits. And I would do like 4 or 5 hours of yoga every single day for that week. And I would spend like 5 hours like doing stuff like getting a deep tissue massage or like in the sauna, or having oil poured on my forehead. And like it's really interesting because like all these methods that I never had much respect for. Like my first few days there, I was such a whiny. Like I kid you not. I'm so sorry for my mom for listening. I'm sorry for being so whiny. Because I thought like the idea behind that was going on vacation. But instead we kind of went to the space with no internet, and I was stuck in the rain in the middle of nowhere. So like my first few days I was so whiny because like I just had no interest in this at all. And over the period of time I came to accept the fact that I'm not going anywhere. I'm stuck here for a week. And when I kind of came to terms with that and started experiencing that myself, like I lost 10 kilos in a week. And I also came out feeling so much better in terms of flexibility, in terms of like just general health. I felt really good. And when I started university that year in fall, when I came back to Edmonton, I felt like I was on fire. Like I could do anything.
Right.
And it was great. And then I watched Dr. K's stream this year. And then I revisited our Ayurveda again because I was interested in it. So I did a bunch of deep diving into some of the books, some of the texts, and because initially it was mostly a verbal practice. And so like as I kind of read deeper into it and kind of learned a little bit more about it, a lot of it's still kind of hidden to me abstractly. So my mom makes this argument to me all the time where she says that when it comes to Ayurveda, like a lot of that Indian medicine is ahead of Western medicine because it takes the plunge on some things.
Right.
Whereas Western medicine has to confirm things through science and hypothesis. Indian medicine kind of intuits that or just jumps straight into that, which is an interesting perspective, right? I still don't know if I fully agree with it, but it's an interesting perspective. And so like I just kind of decided to let's just see what it's like on the other side. And I started reading a bit more about Ayurveda, and I think that him sharing his thoughts about like karma, dharma, about like meditation exercises, if it's actually benefiting these people, then like you know what, all the power. Yeah. That's pretty cool, and it's helped me revisit Ayurveda as well. So I would advocate for that.
It's interesting. I think that a lot of people don't like being told that what they're doing is wrong. People, because they buy into, you know, the hive minds, all that sort of stuff, and to be told like, no, that's toxic, you have to cut it out. People are like, no, I'd rather believe that you're wrong rather than I'm wrong. For me, I get a lot of people saying like, what are you doing? But I will, whenever I take a shower, I will turn off the lights so it's completely pitch black in there. My favorite is when I can't tell if my eyes are open or closed, like that dark. And someone mentioned to me like that could be seen as a form of meditation because it blocks out sort of any outside distractions and you're just left there with what's in your head. And so it's up to you to clear that, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I would highly recommend it to anyone out there. Try it at least once. You know, just when you're taking a shower, just shut the lights off. Trust me, you know your shower layout better than you think you do.
I would still be scared, but I trust you on that.
Yeah, take the plunge.
I'm gonna try it.
Fair
I'm gonna try it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Maybe try today. I don't know.
And then I will
Evan, do you have
sell you some other stuff.
Hey, if I die in the shower, like I'm blaming you, Shashank. If I slip and hit my head like on the back of the shower head and that's how I die, it's on you.
Okay, I will take that responsibility. I won't. Yeah, Evan, as a non-Indian descent person, do you practice any like meditation or anything?
I've meditated in the past. It was actually taught to me in a psychology class. Yeah. So I've tried it in the past, and it definitely seems like it helps. With me personally. Yeah, I just think, you know, with Dr. K, like the entire point of all this is to normalize mental health.
Yeah.
And I think accessing the common Twitch user is a pretty good demographic to try to target with this.
Yeah.
Why do you think so? That's interesting.
Because a lot of Twitch users are young, especially for these larger, like very memey streamers.
Yeah.
It's like their average demographic is like 14 to 18, and that's when people need to start learning about mental health.
Right.
So.
Yeah, you're right. I never thought of that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I think
that does make a lot of sense.
In a weird way, I think that the anonymization of the internet might help with this in the future. Because, like, with a lot of mental health stuff, there's a lot of stigma around coming out and saying, like, I personally have an issue. So I think with everything being anonymous, it's like, this username has an issue. Help them.
I think that's a really good point, actually.
Sorry, go ahead,
Yeah.
Evan. Go you.
No, I just think that's a really good point. Yeah, it's like that is one of the advantages of not having your name and face plastered everywhere
Yeah.
on the internet.
I guess anonymity has its pros and cons.
Yeah.
I was so focused on like the fact that it just contributes to the hive mind, but I never thought of the perspective that it just makes it easier for people to try it out themselves.
Right. Yeah, it'll
That's
be
true.
cool to see what happens. We're in a period of great change in the world. So I guess it's
I
up
actually
to
just wanted to touch on this just quickly because I know we're a little bit off topic, but I wanted to quickly ask you guys like, I wanted to know your opinions about what it's going to be like once COVID's seen its wave, whenever that is, next 4 months, next year. Like, I'm interested to know how you think the world's going to change, like after COVID's made its way around.
it's up in the air right now. Um I think we will see a shift towards more online content and just being able to do stuff from home. But I do think we'll have that period of time right after where people just go crazy about doing everything outside.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty much. So that's interesting because I think it's changed a lot of things. The most biggest observations I've made or I've come across is universities are not getting funded that much
Yeah.
during COVID time, so they're struggling a bit. Even so, like I feel it's going to change a lot of the ways university is taught. I was under the impression that what I'm paying for when I go to universities, I'm paying for student life. That's kind of what I'm paying for. I'm paying for the interaction with you guys on campus. I'm paying for in a weird way. But also like it's kind of I think with the opportunity to do that at the very least. But even that being said, I think that university is going to take a major paradigm shift
Yeah.
when it comes to online curriculum post COVID. But not only that, I also found like I read the article on Medium recently about how Shopify has gone completely online. It's a completely remote company now. They don't have an office anymore.
Huh.
So there are companies who are making that total shift to online and work from home. Now, I personally am someone who hates working from home because
Yeah.
I can't separate my work from my home.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm the same. Yeah.
But I'm interested to hear your thoughts about like this entire new paradigm that's coming about and how tech companies are taking the plunge to actually kind of go online completely, and game studios too.
Yeah. Because like they're moving our university classes online for fall as well. Evan, as another person in first year, what are your thoughts?
Well, in terms of university, I think, yeah, I hate working from home. I want to be there. I want to have a place designed for this. Dr. Hammer is really going at it, by the way.
We can hear.
Yeah. Yeah, it's when this hopefully all eventually ends, we're going to have another transitioning period. Like we had this period that's still going on for some where it's difficult to transition to this online, social distancing format. And I think it's going to happen again, just going into an in-person format
Right.
for everyone. And some are going to react to it in different ways. Like Atty, you said some tech companies are going fully online, and they're going to have a much different reaction than ones who require, like the trades who need to be in person.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see. I can't say I know for sure what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I have a bit of an interesting perspective on this, where I'm not a proponent from work from home generally. And the reason I say this is because I was at a workshop for product management not too long ago. And we had this guy coming from California, and he's a really cool guy. To kind of tell us about product management, like tips and tricks and stuff like that. And I learned the importance of this thing called co-location, which means that people who you work closely with and the people who you interact with on a daily basis, like, are near you at all times.
Right.
And I think that's what the office space kind of lends itself to, because then you can just go to your coworker's desk and be like, knock, knock, hey, you want to tell me about this idea that I have? Versus like, can we schedule a call on Zoom right now, please? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so much more different because of that in-person interaction. And I think that it leads to spontaneity, which is so important in creative fields.
Right.
Like, I don't think spontaneity gets the credit it deserves when it comes to creative fields like game development or tech.
Yeah. I know when I was working as a developer, it was weird because even on the weekends, when I'd have to work weekends, I'd go into the office and work, and like no one would be there, but just being able to work in a place that is specifically for my job instead of just working on the couch at home was so much nicer.
Yeah. Speaking of tech, I kind of want to move into the next thing we have kind of going around, which is teaching parents to play 3D games.
So, yesterday and the day before, I've been trying to get my mom to play Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and I chose Zelda because it's a game where you need to, anywhere you look you can go, so you need to know where you're looking, I guess. For her and for my dad, whenever I've tried to get him to play like Minecraft or something, it's tough to be able to move the character and the camera at the same time. It's two different processes for them. For us, we've been trained. We've been playing games for years, right? For the majority of our lives, we're so used to the claw grip, right? For them, they don't know how to hold the controller starting off, and then they'll have to look down and check which button is where every time they want to do something. So it got me thinking about how we design games, because when games are designed, we take some assumptions. We make some assumptions that the person going into it at least knows something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a series of videos about this sort of topic I saw on YouTube, where this guy tried to teach his girlfriend or wife, just gave her a bunch of games to play, gave her no instructions, and just let her loose. And how there's this language of video games.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think I know what you're talking about. I think I watched that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Raspberry time.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
one.
that's one here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are you guys' thoughts on this?
I want to go first.
Yeah. Sure. I think, yeah, like you said, there's definitely some sort of gaming literacy that's needed, and that's kind of the barrier to entry that's become the norm with games nowadays.
Yeah.
And especially games are getting more and more complicated. It's a lot easier to get into the original Mario than Mario Odyssey. So that reliance on you having some sort of predetermined knowledge on how games work is becoming more and more necessary for the devs to do what they want to do and make these interesting experiences.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. Like you touched on like those twin stick controls that we're all used to, and I remember reading that when that was first introduced, the first controllers to have two joysticks, people thought it was ridiculous. Journalists were saying this is never going to work. This is just a gimmick. It's never going to last, and we're just going to go back to our basic, like single joystick and a few buttons kind of deal.
Right.
And we've just moved more into this format, really.
Yeah.
So where almost any free game is designed with 2 joysticks in mind.
So that is a great point, and I want to talk about Mario for a bit, in relation to this because you brought it up. I also have another point, which I hope I don't forget. But the thing about the twin stick controls that we're so used to and grow up with is that we don't have the same barriers to entry that other people have, right? Like we can still use both our hands. We still have good dexterity. We still use a controller relatively well. And so there's a dexterity challenge involved with handling a controller, like a DualShock 4.
Right.
And so, or the Pro Controller, or Joy-Cons, or whatever. And so the trade-off the game designers made at some point, and that ergonomic designers made at some point, is that you have traded off accessibility for action economy. In the sense that with a controller, you now have access to the shoulder buttons, the face buttons, the pad and the 2 sticks, and the buttons in sticks as well. And now you have attachments, or perhaps like in some of the Pro controllers and Switch, you have like buttons on the plates underneath the controllers, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have so many buttons.
Yeah.
And when you're playing a game like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, or Mario Odyssey, when you're playing games like those 2 games, like there's so much to do. There's so many actions that you can perform with your buttons. In AC Odyssey, this is really interesting because like the way they do it is that they give you a skill, so you learn different skills as you go down the skill tree, and you assign those skills to certain face buttons. When you're pressing, I think L1, and then you press space button, you activate that ability.
Right.
And you can press the down button on the face on the cross pad to switch out a palette. So the way Odyssey deals with this is that you can have up to 8 abilities at any point, even more if you want. So up to I guess so up to 12 abilities, and 3 palettes, which I think is like anybody who does not know how to use a controller is gonna have a nightmare of a time.
Oh yeah.
Playing with that.
Yeah.
Right? Because like, first of all, modifier buttons. First you press this button, then you press this button, is already harder than pressing a single button. And pressing a single button is already hard. And now I'm telling that I can swap my buttons and what they do at any point. Like, this is a mental stack. And like, as a person who's played games forever, I still find it hard to swap my palettes and my action palettes.
Yep.
So like, controllers, while you can do things with the buttons that you have, like, you're just making it so much more complicated for people to buy into.
Yeah.
The threshold for that buy-in is so much higher when you have more actions to perform.
Yeah.
And more options. Now, the game designer in me, and what I've learned over time is that the more options you have, generally, the more meaningful options you have, the better your gameplay experience is. All right, and that's running a game. When talking about a controller, does that still apply? What do you think?
I think no. I think that the issue is that it's not that the controller has too many buttons, although that does play into it a little bit. It's that each button has too many things it does. I know that when I'm playing a game for the first time, sometimes there'll be like the 3 pages of controls, and it's like when you're on the ground, when you're in a car, when you're in the air, and just like completely different control schemes. What am I supposed to do?
Learn all of them. Duh, that's your homework, dude.
Yeah. It really does feel like homework. You gotta learn the system before you can be good at the game, before you can start to enjoy it, right? So
yeah,
I have a follow-up question. when it comes to people who don't have that gaming literacy, like my parents, do I start them off with something like Mario? Something old where there's this button, all it does is jump. All this button does is run. Go wild.
So,
I think
Evan, you can go first.
okay. Yeah, I think there's definitely that. I think that's a good way of doing it, because if we're talking about this as literacy, you're teaching someone to read. You don't just give them To Kill a Mockingbird. You give them some children's book, right? It's like they're not going to know everything happening in a larger game, so you give them a smaller game where it's easier to consume.
Right.
And these older games, like earlier Mario's, they were designed on controllers that were more limited, and that informed the design in some way. Like Atty brought up AC Odyssey, and how you get those tech trees, and you kind of have a tool for every job. With the original Mario, you had one tool that did every job. You were able to interact, to platform, and to engage in combat with just a jump with Mario. While in AC Odyssey, you have so many different things you can do that all require different skill sets.
Yeah.
And then, just to build on that, like with the Mario example, like it's so important to remember that when the original Mario came out on the NES, Mario Brothers came out on the NES, like you had a crosspad and the A and B buttons, and that was it.
Yeah.
Right? So when I was asking the question earlier about like having more choice in the controller, does that affect anything? Is that meaningful? I look at the NES controller and think about the crosspad, the directional crosspad, and the A and B buttons. And I think that was so simple.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, when I tried to make my dad play Spider-Man PS4, nightmare. But he's a really smart guy, so I picked it up in a bit. But anyway, in relation to that, he's like, what do these buttons do? And I said, you know what, Dad? Just press the R2 button and you'll be fine. But his Spider-Man PS4, if you just hold the R2 button, you just swing around the entire city automatically. It swings for you. Right? Which I think is a great feature to add for people who don't have any literacy with controller.
Right.
Just press the R2 button. You're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a low barrier to entry for that game.
Yeah.
In terms of the movement, at least.
Yeah, just with the movement, right? Just to feel like you're Spider-Man.
Yeah.
But like everything else in the game is still complicated because you have the crosspad and other things, and the modifier buttons. But with Mario on the NES, like you said, you have a jump action which does so much, and you have a B button which like activates your ability, right? Like if you have the flip fireballs or whatever else it is. And like, what more do you need? Because all the physics is built, and the challenge of the game is built into just that single mechanic, and it does it so well in terms of design, with the simplistic button controls. And the reason why it's so easy to onboard people onto Mario 1 versus onboarding into Mario Odyssey is because of the fact that I personally think that the control has a lot to do with it.
Yeah,
it's a lot to do by limiting the options one can perform and then opening up what they can do.
Right.
So I did a lot of research last year, my professors, on learning in video games, and one of the big things that came out of that is the research is that people, when they're learning a new skill, they haven't adopted the germane knowledge, into their unconscious mind, so they can't perform the same tasks that we can perform unconsciously. They need to put a lot of thought and energy into it. So when people who are not literate in the language of games try and play a game, the first thing that comes to their mind is, I have so many buttons to press. What does what do? How is it affecting the game? I can't even like move my left and right thumb at the same time. Like this basic stuff that's been ingrained in us for all this time is inaccessible because of the fact that they're too busy thinking about so many things. That the mental stack is huge.
Yeah.
When you have limited options, when you limit the amount of options somebody has, the mental stack is much shorter because there's so many options you can do.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
I do. Sorry, go on.
I think I'm gonna start them off on Mario then, Super Mario Bros.
Yeah.
I have a different
Something
challenge.
designed to be simple.
Okay.
I have a different challenge. Is that try starting them off on a mobile game.
Yeah, because my mom, she plays a lot of Candy Crush. Like a lot of Candy Crush. That's something very unconscious for her, right? She's learned that skill. I guess branching off from there, something similar, right?
Or something even a little bit more tangential. Like, one game I think that does such an intuitive job of teaching game mechanics, and I wrote an article about this too, is Florence, in the Mountains Studio, which is just a small narrative, interactive experience.
Right.
And the actions you perform there are all based on touch. That is the mechanic of the game. The mechanic of the game is touch.
Right.
And the devs have thought of like, okay, we have the singular mechanic. How can you make it do multiple things? Like what Evan said. I have a tool that can do multiple things. And I think that is a great example of a game that can teach that to a player without overloading their cognitive mind and senses. Yeah. But I think mobile games are a great example of this because like you only have, it's a limited controller. It's just like the NES controller. You don't know how much you can do on a mobile screen because everything's touch-based. You can swipe, you can tap, you can hold a direction to move, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, mobile platform is really interesting design for because it's a limited controller, and so it's a constraint to work in to not have as many buttons to work with, not much action economy. But you also can be very intuitive in the way you onboard people onto your platform.
Right. Yeah. My only reservation is like eventually she will have to take the plunge and start using a controller, right? Physical buttons, learning layouts and stuff like that. So I'm trying to formulate a plan. I know we're supposed to be doing a podcast where we talk about stuff in the industry, but no, this is planning time.
This is important. This is so important. Yep. Getting a gamer into the scene is important.
Yep.
This is an onboarding session.
You can come back to us with results.
Yeah, exactly. Like 5 episodes down the line, like suddenly she's speed running something.
Or 2.
Yeah, so my mom's now doing hitless runs of Dark Souls 3. So yeah, I'd say there's been a bit of an upgrade there.
She's forgone the standard USB controller and is now using a USB steering wheel.
Yep.
She's not playing Dark Souls with the Donkey Kong bongos.
Oh, that was such a great video to watch.
Oh man. I've seen a couple of people do this before on the internet. I think I don't know if you guys know Rami Ismail. Do you know Rami Ismail?
No.
On Twitter?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a guy who started like gamedev.world, and he's pretty well known in the community to be someone who like advocates for accessibility and for equal opportunity. And so as someone who's worked in the games industry for a bit, he recently got, I don't know how recently, this is about a year long ago, but he got his mom to start playing games, video games, and she's finished Final Fantasy 15 and God of War. Yeah. And like, that's interesting because I guess he just like told his mom to take the plunge basically, and she just learned on herself.
Yeah.
And she streams on Twitch now.
Oh, that's awesome. Get her to talk to Dr. K.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I guess.
Yeah.
As a game designer, because that dude's a game designer, right? It's a very, very good learning opportunity because you get to see someone who doesn't know anything and like watch how they learn controls, how they maneuver around what they're able to do, the interface, right? And I guess this kind of segues into our make section. Pretty good.
Nice.
Hey.
I saw you were working towards that. I was waiting for it.
We're killing this, man. We're killing the segues.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Atty, you want to talk to the audience about what our make section is today?
Yeah, sure. And it's a great segue. I think it matters a lot. It connects a lot to what we're going to talk about next, which is what games can learn from tech about UX, user experience design, and vice versa. So I call myself an interaction designer, because that's what I believe, and I am very interested in the way people interact with technology, and stuff like talking about accessibility and controllers and literacy, and so when it comes to UX, like when you're when you're a game designer, you're trying to think about, like what mechanics are really fun, like how can I design this game to like have so many options that can be skill challenged, or perhaps it's something that really makes the player think in terms of puzzles, like in Zelda, traditional Zeldas. And so when you're thinking about it from a game design perspective, like one thing that the tech industry does, and I've worked in for shops before, so this is coming from background knowledge, is the ability to try and really map out a user journey, is what the terminology used in the tech field is. And what this means is that you lay out, either with sticky notes or just with a giant piece of cardboard or chart paper or whatever, you line up, like I've seen walls at studios, right? Offices, where they just like sticky note all the way across the walls with user journey, and then it's segmented into various different phases of the user journey. And I think that as game designers, we can learn from that. Like, I know in the end, as game designers, our goal is to have the players experience certain emotion, right? Or perhaps to have fun of some sort.
Yeah.
But with that end goal, it's a little bit too vague. We need to try and dig in a little bit deeper into what can contribute to that, and we kind of build that up through trial and error as game designers, which I think is the wrong way to go about it. As far as I'm aware, like AAA studios and indie developers kind of follow the same practices,
right?
Where we're like, okay, we need this is the level design that this person's come up with, and it's just a narrative. Let's glue it all together. We need art assets by tomorrow. Good luck with that, right? And like, it's really just a massive glue. But I feel like if your entire organization has a very basic understanding of what the player is going to feel throughout the game and its segments, you can have a lot more informed decisions from everybody. So when something doesn't line up, you know that it's not intentional, right? Versus when you have a game and you're like, we want the player to feel, sad when Shepard dies, but like you're totally ignoring the fact that the user's journey throughout the 3 Mass Effects games has been that they've come so close to Shepard and people that he saved or she saved, and you have gone through this emotional roller coaster with this person. And the ending of Mass Effect 3 doesn't do the user journey justice. Because it wasn't taken into complete account after looking at it from a broad perspective, what the user has gone through this entire trilogy.
Right.
It's more like, want something really cinematic to capture the end of this franchise. How do we do that? Right? It's like, it's a different perspective because you're thinking about it from a long-term perspective.
Yeah.
And so I think game designers can learn a lot from tech when it comes to from tech UX side of things, when it comes to like user journeys and being more objective with the way they do things. I'm talking a lot, so I'm kind of sorry about this, but this is kind of my domain.
You are the designer.
Rant away.
It's okay. So one thing that it pisses me off about game designers and studios is that people don't use data. People don't collect data, and it's like it's so annoying for me to see this sometimes. Like applicable to people who bring their games to like expos or whatever. Is that they just have a feedback form that's like, how did you enjoy this game on a scale of 1 to 10? Wow. You learned so much from that data. right?
Yeah.
But like you can collect so much more information from people who are playtesting your game. And you can really dig deep into stuff about your prototypes. You can show or use. You can A/B test with your users, game designers. Did you know you can A/B test with your games? You can do it. You can make 2 builds of the same prototype and then showcase them and see which one has better results. Like you can see which one gains more interest and retains more people. You can get metrics on how often they were distracted by something else. You can get metrics on how often they would look at certain parts of the screen. There are tests in the UX called KLM tests, which record how fast a mouse cursor moves across the screen and which button, how long it takes for a user to finish certain task.
Right.
Like there are actual data driven metrics that you can kind of gather to have more concrete observational data to make your decisions off of, versus being like, I tried this prototype out and I took it to the convention, but the people didn't seem to like it, so I'm gonna just test again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but do you know which direction you're testing in? I just have a feeling that this particular mechanic needs to be scrapped. People said they didn't like this mechanic, so I'm going to scrap it and try something else. 5 months later, you're like, well, fuck. Like, you can reduce the amount of time you need. You can reduce the amount of resources you need when you have a much more data-driven direction to head towards.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to talk a lot more about design thinking and heuristic evaluations, usability scores. But I also want to talk something a little bit more important, which is what tech can learn from games. And the interesting thing about tech is that it's such a capitalist-driven industry, where like everyone cares about. So when will the user click on the buy subscription button? If we've offered them a free 30-day trial, like, is that enough to hook them in? Like that's the thought process for a lot of startups and a lot of companies. And what games can bring to that is a paradigm shift. Is to think from the perspective of what can our service do for the user to deliver this very specific emotional aesthetic, right? How can our platform deliver this emotional experience to this user, right? So, for example, when you're thinking about Evan, give me an app. Give me an app that you use often.
I mean, recently it's been Skip the Dishes.
Okay, Skip the Dishes, right? With Skip the Dishes, the user journey is like this, right? You are the user. You open up your app or your web page, which is important. I use web page. A lot of people use apps. You put down your address, and then it finds the restaurant closest to you and gives you a list. You see the ratings. You see them sorted down by price point, whatever else you want. You have options. Click on the button. You put your order down. You add your items. You add cart. You choose whether or not to tip the driver, and then you press checkout. And then they give you a notification the driver's on their way, and they show you a map. They show you a map showing that this is where the store is, this is where your house is, where the driver is, right? And all this is in the same 15 minutes that it takes for you to order food. Right. So the experience that it provides you is one. Okay, imagine I'm Evan. I'm Evan. Hi, my name is Evan. I'm really hungry right now. I need some food. Let me open Skip the Dishes real quick. And then you go, the closest restaurant to me is McDonald's on 109th Street. Okay. Went to McDonald's. McDonald's sucks. Scroll down. Okay. I see that Subway is open and it's cheap and healthy. I'll go for Subway because cheap and healthy. And so, well, kind of healthy. And so you kind of click on Subway. You make your order, and it's pretty good because like you add your toppings or whatever. Click order, and it shows you this map, and you can like track the progress, right? So you can be like, okay, it says that the driver's going to take 5 minutes from me to get to the store. If I'm just going to get to my house, I have 10 minutes. I can go to the washroom, take a shower, come back. My food will be there in no time, right? Or I can stare at the screen this entire time and watch the car move on the screen and make something order comes to my place. In that anticipation. So Skip the Dishes plays so well into the fact that you are a hungry customer, and that is the user journey they provide to a hungry customer. How can we feed a hungry customer efficiently and fast? And that is the entire model behind Skip the Dishes, right? And that's the experience they provide. So if you were to make Skip the Dishes a cooler app, what would you do?
Oh dear.
Sure, you can answer this too if you want.
Yeah, please give me a hand here.
I mean, it's tough, because like it's very efficient at what it does.
Yeah.
You got the right answer.
Yeah.
The answer is you don't gamify it.
Right.
Don't gamify it.
Yeah.
Do not gamify Skip the Dishes, please. Not everything needs to be gamified to do its job well.
Yeah.
Tech people, I'm looking at you. Don't gamify stuff that doesn't need to be gamified. Holy shit! This is like my biggest qualm is everyone is like, we want to gamify this thing. We want to make it more intuitive. We want people to come back and to have a point system.
We want to
be competitive with the leaderboard.
People.
There's a disconnect between what people really want and what companies think people want because they don't do enough user research.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, to make Skip the Dishes a better app, like what you could do is add more flavor text.
Yeah.
Like if you really want to make it like a game, add more flavor text, right?
It is food after all.
It is food after all. So you add literal flavor text. If you really want, you can have an option to turn on puns. And next thing you know, when you order your Subway sandwich, you can have a pun about how long it is. A foot long. And the next time your driver is like a foot away from your house, you can make a pun about that. Hey, you know what? Your driver's a foot long away from your house. And that's it. I would laugh. My humor is questionable, but I would laugh. But that's just an idea. I'm not saying it's going to work. It's an idea.
Yeah.
Right? Like games are so good at evoking emotion because they are full of flavor. Because their goal is to deliver this particular experience to the user through this narrative, which some of the apps and tech misses a lot, and through the environment it provides, because you are in a virtual space.
Yeah.
So if you think of your app as a virtual space with a narrative, you can really adopt what games can offer.
Right.
Dr. Hammer's got the right idea.
Dr. Hammer is excited about this talk.
Anyway, I know we talked a little bit more about this stuff, but I don't want to rant on too much, take away too much of the time from you guys.
Right.
So,
well, I do want to talk about this idea of user experience helping with the narrative. I write plays, which are an art form just the same as games, right? And when you write a play, you're never finished, right? Every time you perform it, you'll get some note and you'll make an amendment and you'll perform it again and you'll keep changing it. It's ever changing because you want your message to come across the best way it can. So you'll ask people, what did you feel? What was the message you got? Was there anything in there that sort of muddied that, right? And I think when it comes to tech and games not taking this into account, it's sort of getting over yourself. Getting over the fact that what you've made is not perfect. You need to let go of what you have currently in order to move on and make something better.
That's a good thought.
Yeah.
I'm sitting on that for a bit.
All right. Evan, what are your thoughts, and possibly Dr. Hammer's?
Always Dr. Hammer for one. I don't know. When Atty said, "Oh, you can bring, or you can do A/B testing at a con or whatever when you bring your game to show off, and you can bring these two different versions," that's something that hasn't occurred to me before,
Yeah.
which I think is kind of telling as someone who's generally not super into UX design. I feel like that's just, the general thought is, why would I do this? I think a lot of designers, even when they're showing off a work in progress game, they don't want it to look like a work in progress game. So, and they feel like if they have these two versions, that's inherently saying, I don't know exactly what the right answer is.
Yeah.
So I feel like it almost comes down to a pride thing, and I think that goes back to getting over yourself and accepting that this is not perfect, and I want to figure out what would make it better from the community.
I think the best case of this is No Man's Sky. Because when that game came out, it was nothing like what they said it was going to be, or what people thought it was going to be. And so what they did was they got over themselves. They shut off basically all communication with the public in order to work on fixing it. And they did, and it's a really good game now. Right?
Mm-hmm. I think coming back to that point of getting over yourself, I think that's really important. By the way, I'm so conscious right now about how fast I talk, and I realized that when I started talking about UX, like my speed just ramped up.
It's something you're excited about.
Yeah, I need to be more cognizant of that next time. But I think the important thing here is that, like, when game designers are, and this comes to your point, Evan, when game designers are making and showing off their games at conventions, for example, they approach it from the perspective of, I'm an artist and this is my painting, right? And I want people to see it, and I want to get feedback on it. But I don't want to get too hurt from that feedback because it's my baby and I've worked on it for a very long time. The mindset that tech people have because they're capitalists is that, and I'm not saying anything wrong with capitalism, is that like you have the mindset of what is going to sell.
Right.
And what is going to sell is what people want to buy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Naturally. And that comes down to, so when people go A/B testing at conventions for tech, when they bring it to like a tech event, like whatever, and they're testing it out with crowds, their objective is to figure out which one of these features has more people hooked.
Right.
Right? And so when they A/B test the features, they're like, okay, I know that A doesn't do nearly as good as B in terms of, I guess, hooking a person onto the platform.
Yeah.
So let's scrap it because B doesn't make more money. It's very objective.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you bring your baby, your piece of art, to a convention to have it ripped through, like you A/B test a game and the mechanic of the game, you're gonna be like, damn, but I really like that mechanic over there. Like it was, I put a lot of effort into coding that jump and that coyote time. Right? Like that's something that game designers would feel because they put more effort into prototyping than most tech people do.
Yeah.
And it comes down to the fact that games is at the intersection of art and technology.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting space to be in. That doesn't mean you can't borrow from the objectivity of A/B from the UX of tech.
I think to build off of the whole intersection thing, part of it is a culture thing. The culture of gaming. When you talk about the story of No Man's Sky, if they came out and said, we're gonna fix it, we're gonna do this and this and this, they would have just built on to the this ballooning idea of what the game is gonna be. So shutting up and getting your work done, it forced the change without having to go through the community. Because, and this is something that's said a lot, gamers don't know what they want. A lot of the time they don't. They're just like, I want this and I want this and I want this. I want every game must be an open world, every game must have RPG mechanics, every game must have this and this and this. And when it comes down to it, no. That's not what you want. So I get what I'm trying to get at is I can kind of get when game designers say, no, this is what it's going to be like. But I think that the culture goes both ways, right?
Mm. Yeah, I think that the whole idea of which feature a person wants is somewhat of a different argument from, I guess, understanding. Maybe you're right. Maybe there is like balance there somewhere.
Yeah.
Where there's a middle point where both of them, all those cultures kind of meet each other, intersect at a sweet spot.
Right.
In my experience and observation, like just the objectiveness. So the reason why you A/B test is because you have two mechanics have an intuition will work together well.
Yeah.
So you present those and then you're like, which one's better? Versus going to a gamer and being like, what do you want to see in this game?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then they'd be like, I want an open world. You know, they won't but like I do think there's probably a sweet spot in there when it comes to compromising what you think that the gamer wants and what the gamer thinks the gamer wants.
Yeah.
What do you think, Evan?
Yeah, I mean, whenever I join a games community and I start seeing all these suggestions from a community about, hey, you should do X with this game, or you should do Y, or make X character do Y or whatever, which is almost impossible within the game scope, it really highlights that maybe that kind of feedback isn't what a designer always needs.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about you want reactions to what's there or what could be there, rather than their own suggestions on what could be there, because you know more about what can and can't be done within the game.
Right.
Mm.
A/B testing.
A/B testing.
Yeah. Always back to A/B testing.
It's a really useful tool.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, like, if you guys still young in university careers, you might come across it sometime. But
I mean,
if you do get the opportunity to practice it, do it.
I hope to be doing more developing in the future, and as a full stack developer, I've heard so much about like feature tests and like A/B testing and stuff. It's
good stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, if anyone's interested in knowing more about UX stuff, about more tests you can perform, more ways to objectively improve your game, more from the tech field, feel free to check out this webpage called interactiondesign.org, with a hyphen between interaction and design, because they have like a pretty good library of sorts of terminology and tests that you can check out, and then do more research on YouTube, obviously.
Yeah.
Or you can follow me on Twitter and follow me on medium.com, where I post about this kind of stuff all the time. But yeah, like I think UX is one of those fields where it's talking about the experience of the user, and the general way that a user can feel and the actions they take given choices, and games are all about choices, right? Meaningful choices. So I feel like it's an interesting field because it's advanced in the way it's applied technology, but it has so much potential when it comes to being applied to games, because games are so emotional in nature,
Right.
so emotionally driven.
Yeah.
Tech, you can be more emotional. It's okay to cry.
Good lesson.
Good lesson.
Good lesson.
On that note, do you think that's a good time to wrap it up?
Yeah, we've covered topics we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, though, I want to ask, like, how are you guys doing? It's a bit late for this, but how are you guys doing?
Let's do a round table right now.
Let's do a round table.
Round table.
Evan, I don't.
Shashank, you
Oh,
first.
okay. Yeah, I'm doing good. I've been playing a lot of games, and trying to get work done, and like I'll have these bursts around midday where I'm just like, okay, I'm going to get 5 things done, and then after that, nothing for the next 2 days.
How about you, Evan?
I'm doing pretty well overall. I've already found with this podcast that I'm trying to play things that I might have put by the wayside, or trying to relearn what I knew before.
Yeah.
So I have things to talk about. It's already providing an interesting talent, which is very nice.
Yeah.
That's really
I'm
awesome.
doing pretty good.
How about you, Atty?
I think I'm getting a momentum back again. So it's been going pretty good.
Mhm.
I just need to get back into my exercise routine. I think I'll be
Yeah.
feeling a lot better after that.
Oh, God.
But but I have been playing MMOs. So I recently started playing Phantasy Star Online 2,
Yeah.
which got its NA release a few days ago. So
Huh.
I started playing. It's been out for 8 years in Japan, and it finally came to North America. So now I'm playing Phantasy Star Online 2. I've been grinding away on that game for a couple of days now.
Nice.
Nice.
But I'm also enjoying. I'm currently doing a bit of volunteer work, so I'm really enjoying that as well. It's
Right.
really cool. But yeah, other than that, pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear all of you doing good.
Yeah.
Like, peace and love, a lot of peace. And I hope all of you viewers are doing good too.
We ought to do some stuff like Dr. K, but a little less public. Tell you what. Anyone who's watching this that's willing to, message us on SoundCloud, YouTube, or just email us at thegamesden at ualberta.ca. And I will personally respond to you. Just about anything. About how your day went, what you're excited for in the future, games you've been playing, absolutely anything.
And if you don't want Shashank to reply to you, you can at me on Twitter, or you can join the Games Den Discord and hang out with us there.
Yep.
Oh, well, you should join the Games Den Discord, regardless.
No matter what.
Yeah.
No matter what. That's
And with that, I think that about does it.
Yep.
So
Dr. Hammer is back.
Dr. Hammer is back.
Dr. Hammer is back.
We are a brand new podcast. This is episode 2. So there's gonna be some growing pains. But if you have any suggestions about anything we should do, what we're doing good, what we should change, let us know, and we'll try and do it.
How fast and loud and obnoxious I am. That's also fair game.
Yeah. I don't think you are, but
And yeah, was the most affirmative yeah I've heard in my entire life. It's great.
sorry, I was trying to
Great.
pause because my dad was closing a door, but yeah, I don't think you are. I think that's something for the viewers to decide.
Please.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a Dr. K's podcast next. Don't worry about it.
We'll have Dr. K on this podcast. How about that?
Yeah. All right.
We have group therapy session.
We need it. See you guys.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Have a good one.